Hello, and welcome to Words Unwritten, where we talk about how to create greater impact in your business and the world through thoughtful communication and a kick ass rebellious mindset. I'm your host, Nino, copywriter, ghostwriter, poet, and the owner of the Writers Rebellion. Today, I'm joined by Stephanie Kaiser, who is the founder and CEO of SayMore, a virtual community focused on mental health. Stephanie has created a successful mission based business based on her passion and advocacy for mental health for women and queer people. This is what inspired our topic for this week: how to find the balance between having a mission-based business that disrupts the norms and makes a difference while still being successful. Stephanie, thank you so much for joining me. Would you like to take a moment and tell the people a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, thank you for having me. That was a great intro. My name is Stephanie Kaiser. I founded SayMore less than a year ago now, and already I've been just hounded with people who are interested and passionate about the same mission that SayMore has, which is bringing people together, creating community around mental health, where we find that it's very much lacking around resources and actionable items around where people can get help. So that's just my passion. It's grown from personal experience, which I'm sure we'll get into today. That's how you and I got connected, which is really awesome. And like you said, with mission based businesses, I think a lot of people, young and old, are looking for businesses to support that actually match and align with their values, which I think is going to drive the next decades of business and entrepreneurs, which I hope we see even more of, because I think what we're seeing now with corporations and the distrust in the public is rampant. So I'm really hopeful about the future, and I hope that comes across today and people can get hope from this talk. So
Yes, and total side note, the astrology is so in support of everything you just said. And
good.
so yeah, just to add a little woo in there,
Yeah.
everything that you feel as like an instinct is like supported by the stars.
Uh,
So I completely agree. I think that these kind of like community based, like ethical coming together, what's the betterment for the whole, is totally on par with where we're going to be going within the next 20 years. We're going to see a massive shift in this, I think.
I love that. That's so, I just got shivers when you said that. So I'm so excited because I just know the general feeling in today's world, especially with an election year, is just complete disdain. So I'm just hoping to bring about some, again, better change and motivation for people to still be excited about the future. So that's great.
Yeah, and where we're seeing a lot of that disdain is like pain creates change. And so we're in that like super uncomfy moment with our, major leaders and corporations, like big corporations and stuff. And people are just like, especially the millennials and Gen Zs, they're just like, I'm done with this. And so to see your
Right.
platform has been so wonderful. So you originally came from a male dominated finance world. So what inspired you to create SayMore?
Yeah, I think growing up, I was very fortunate, very privileged to be in a family that was super supportive of anything that I wanted to accomplish. I just knew that going to college, I wanted to have a technical degree so that I just was very aware that as a woman, I wanted to have numbers behind my name so that I could advance quicker. That was very just like my mindset from the jump. But I wasn't as great in my finance classes. I did double major in finance and marketing, minored in computer science. So I was like doing the most, but I just was really insecure. And when I got about that finance role, and I wish someone had told me that really doesn't matter what you major in. Like you go into the world and it's, especially in business. I mean, obviously if we're talking about engineering or something, but business is just like you can go in with any degree and it's really okay. So, yeah, I went into it and I was like shaking in my boots. I started at another different bank, and I quickly learned that everyone is very average. And even in male dominated cultures, I found that like my classes, there were a lot of male dominant personalities, and I was just not as into that. And then when I went into the workforce, I was really realizing still with all these mostly men, they were just not, I don't want to say mediocre because I do respect them, but it wasn't as intimidating to me. And I quickly learned, like within the first year of working, I was being like sexually harassed by a coworker who was married and had kids, and we went on a work trip together. So it was very alarming to me. And I always joked with my friends that, oh, I'm a huge feminist, so this would happen to me, which is just ridiculous. But I was like, I'm glad it's happening to me because I'm going to say something, and like I want to be strong. But the thing is, it kept happening across any work I did. I moved to a different bank unrelated to that experience and had the exact same experience, if not worse. I had experienced discrimination at a large bank. It was just very, just based on my gender. Like I was told to make copies of things that wasn't in my job description, just doing literal like admin work that these boys didn't want to do. And I was so disenchanted with the whole environment. I was like, I'm here to work. I'm here to like make my money and go home. And I just was so frustrated. And COVID was hitting. So the whole world was changing. And the companies that I was working for weren't talking about it, did not care if Black Lives Matter was happening. I just found it so hard to even work with people of color and have them tell me this is so huge and impactful to us. Every day we're suffering and no one cares, you know? And I was like, I can't fake it anymore. And I did have a really good manager who was super supportive of my passions and my personal motivations. But yeah, I found that I was just like, this isn't going to work for me long term. I really did think I could just go to work and come home and I'd be fine for the rest of my life. And I quickly realized that no, I needed to be around really I need to be on people who cared like I did and people who were motivated to actually want to do something about it, not just, donate or volunteer once a year. So, yeah, that's that with finance. Again, I learned a lot and I'm really grateful for the experience. At the same time, someone told me once along the way that you really shouldn't have had to go through that. And I think that has stuck with me. And I hope anyone who goes through any of those experiences, I honestly think it's unavoidable, unfortunately, but I want you to hear it from me. Like, we shouldn't have to go through that just for the sake of being in those fields. And we deserve to feel safe and okay at work without having to compromise, our our systems and our bodies. So yeah, that's my pitch right there because it was impacted me way more than I ever realized, and that sucked. So
Yeah, is that what kind of like sparked that inspiration for SayMore, is to create like that space for people who are struggling with moments like that so they don't feel so alone, especially like in a male dominated industry, or in an industry where harassment or heartlessness is like just very common and normal to happen, to where you feel like the alien in your industry for like giving a fuck, you know?
yeah, it's so sterile and cold, that environment. And I get it, like we have to do our jobs, but especially what we were talking about earlier with huge movements are happening. We're seeing a big shift. And I think as scary as that is, it takes us getting to the edge. Like historically, if you study any kind of movements, it really takes going all the way there to make real change. So I know it feels super scary and uncomfortable, but again, this happens a lot throughout history, especially in the United States. So take comfort knowing that this isn't abnormal completely. But yeah, I think I found that when I was first at my second job and I was getting sexually harassed and discriminated against, I had to file an HR suit that I didn't really want to file, to be honest. I was young, I was an associate, I was like in a small office, I didn't want to ruffle any feathers. And once I filed that, which this was also bad, is word got out that I was talking about some of the experiences that I had. And women were coming up to me in the middle of the workday and being like, I've had that exact same experience. And like people kept coming up and I was like, this is crazy that people are just saying like, me too, me too. And again, it was like very much like the Me Too movement as well. But I was also really disappointed. I found myself being like, guys, why aren't we all working together to stop this? Like, why does it take me as like a measly little analyst to accidentally have to report this to see any real momentum to make it change? And I think that anger kind of fueled me to be like, we need, like, I think you and I talked about how like witches exist because you separate women or you separate any marginalized group and pit them against each other. That is so powerful for the patriarchy, for the systems, because we're not talking to each other.
Yes.
And so I think when I started hearing about other women having the exact same experience with me, regardless of their age or where they were at in their career, I was like, what the hell? Why aren't we talking to each other? Like, that is so powerful, especially in groups of women. Like, again, historically, like, we're so communal. We work together. There's cultures that have like period groups where they just like you in when you're on your period and help you. Like, that is where I was like, why aren't we sticking together? Like, I'm so confused and
Yeah.
disappointed. So, yeah, that's kind of
Yeah.
where SayMore. I was like, what if there was more of a space besides Reddit? Because I don't think that's like another very male dominated space, but I wanted this true genuine space where anyone could come and just say like, hey, is this normal, or like what's actually going on here, like what should I do, and make it a trusted space as much as you can with the internet these days. But yeah.
Right. And you can make, I mean, and we're seeing so much more of that with social media where people are like coming together with like, I'm having this issue with like medical gaslighting. I see a
Yes.
ton of people for like POTS or endometriosis and like things like that. And we're like, our bodies are like physically having so much shit go on with it. And our medical professionals are not listening to us at all. And they're just saying, oh, it's just because you're a girl, it's just because of your uterus, like everything's blamed on our uterus. And it's just like, no, some other
Totally.
shit is happening and I'm not being listened to. And or like it's just jumped to fat phobia and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Like, and so we're seeing more of that with like social media, but having a platform where you can actually conversate with other people who are experiencing this and go into like greater detail, I think is just like could help people like fast track that connection with understanding another person's perspective that may be similar to your own, and help you navigate that space as well, and come back to like a digitalized version of like those communities where women could come together, and throughout history, as the patriarchy grew more and more powerful, it started, like you said, segregating women, segregating, people, so that way everything felt so isolated and alone, because
Yeah.
that made those in power, those who benefited, so much more powerful.
Hmm.
So as you were going through like creating SayMore and wanting to create this platform that is making such a huge difference in people's lives, what mindset hurdles did you go through to overcome like the scarcity that stops so many people from following their hearts and creating something that's totally new and mission driven?
Yeah, I think this, so many hurdles. This is such a great question. I think it, especially with women, and any marginalized group, I think to even start talking about your idea and manifesting it or just sharing it, it's such a vulnerable place to be. And it's really easy to say, oh, it's not even worth it, especially if it doesn't exist. And I want to be very clear with, I was hoping that this already existed. Like I was looking for it for my own sake. I was dating someone who I really wanted to understand better. They had a ton of mental health issues. And I was like, I wonder if I can go somewhere and just find people to talk to help them, even if it wasn't directly me. I wanted to understand my partner. So I was like, please don't make me have to build this because that is so much work. And like, I just hope this exists. Reddit didn't have anything. Social media was like very hit or miss. And I just wanted to anonymously talk to people if I could who were experiencing it or had been experienced or had partners who they were experiencing it with. And I found that just because something doesn't exist does not mean there's not a need. And especially, again, as women or any marginalized group that's told like, stay in your lane and like, there's not dollars for this or what have you. Again, I'm very privileged to be able to like take my own savings and put money towards this. But, there's so many hurdles that we have to go through to even get on the board as far as an entrepreneur in this space. So I think, especially when I was networking and I had already invested in the idea, I was already building it from scratch with technology. I was networking so much and so many people were like, this isn't a good idea. This is dangerous. And like, from like a mental health standpoint, you're going to, be responsible for some of these conversations that could really go awry and all of these things. And I was like, shit, am I going to make this situation worse? And that's where I was really going back and forth where I was like, I should just shut it all down because I don't want to add to the garbage of the internet. And, but then again, on my algorithms with TikTok or any other place, it was like there were so many people who were asking for exactly what I was trying to create. So it was such a confusing dichotomy. And I think what I learned early on is like, talk to the people who are going to use your platform. Like talk to people like yourself who you think will use it or your product or service, whatever it is, because getting feedback from like random people is nice and all, but in the beginning it's just noise and like the people don't understand maybe what you're trying to do. And maybe you need to refine that, which is totally fine. SayMore has already evolved into something different than I originally thought it would be. But at the same time, there's no room for doubt right now. And it's just like, again, take the people who are your cheerleaders and run with it because that is the most powerful thing. And if you really think like, again, I kept being like, I would use this. Like and I'm not saying, I just was also like, I'm an average person who I would just like this for a lot of scenarios. And I would just want other people to feel seen. And like, again, maybe from a clinical standpoint, like when people were telling me this could be dangerous, I was like, yeah, I understand that. But I saw a while ago, someone was saying, oh, do you think the current system is working? And if no, then are you open to new ideas? And I think that's why I kind of kept pushing forward, is like, are we at least open to a new idea of exploring this? And that's what really has kept me going, because what's happening right now isn't working. It's not working for me, it's not
Yeah.
working for a lot of people. So I think if I could just have a little bit of grace and be like, this might work, let's give it a shot. Like, I still have no room for people who are naysayers, because a lot of people who have a lot of opinions, and also entrepreneurs, like, you just don't know what's going to land with the public, like, in general. And so I just think I understand my demographic really well, and like my people. And I'm like, yeah, I think that this will attract the right people too. It's not just going to be another like trash forum site where people are just going to like bitch about things or like shit on each other. Like, sorry, am I allowed to cuss on this? But
Yep. Cuss away.
okay.
Yep.
So I just like, again, trusted my demographic, and I trusted the vision, because I just really, and it takes years. Like, that's what all I was
Yeah.
saying. I was like, take your time. Like, I want to enjoy this, even though it's terrible. At the same time, I'm like, I want to look back on this and say like, oh, I really had to put the work in. And that's like the beautiful part. One day I'm going to tell the story, and it's going to be like, remember when like no one gave a shit about you? And like, remember when like people were saying, oh, this is the worst idea? It's like, okay, add it to my like
Yeah.
interview call log, for the future. So it's just, that's where I'm also like, again, I just want people to get started, because so many people have so many great ideas, and I just always wonder where we'd be if those people got the right funding or got the right opportunities.
Right. And that's, and I think with innovation, anytime we're doing something innovative, we're always going to have that pushback, because there are so many people that like, because I think, anytime you're doing something different than the norm, it challenges people's perspective of what is normal to them,
Yeah.
and like how they have just compromised what they're being called to in order to fit in, because we're so trained
Right.
to fit in. And so anything innovative in any sort of way, like we see this a lot with like the queer community. We're just all out here living our best queer lives, and then we're being trashed just because we look a certain way, or we break the social norm by doing something different with our hair even,
Right.
and because it challenges those people's idea of like, but I have to fit in, so you have to fit in,
Right.
and that's that scarcity that comes around, and it's just a human trait that we have to overcome.
Mm.
And so it's no different when you're doing something innovative in business, that you get that pushback, because it's like, no, this is the way it's always been done. You can't do something different than the way it's always been,
Right.
and that's seen throughout history with so many things, right?
Yep.
So, and I love that you are really focusing in on like the people that it helps, because those are the only people that matters, right?
Right.
Your audience and your target demographic of people are the only people that matter when it comes to this platform, especially when you're a mission-based, impact-driven company. You have to focus on the mission. You have to focus on the people that it's for. And when you do that, then things expand so much
Yeah.
more. And so with your company, being so innovative, have you had to do anything different with your communication in your business in order to connect with those specific people, or to represent yourself in a different way than you see across like similar platforms?
Yeah. Also a great question. I think from a business standpoint, I'm very like strategic and analytical. Again, coming from finance, I loved numbers, so I was really good about that, I think. But so in the beginning of creating a platform, it was really easy for me to be like, here's what I'm trying to accomplish. This is what I want it to feel and look like and whatever. But then once it launches, we did a soft launch in August, and it like this business came out of me feeling so many things and empathizing with so many different types of people and wanting to learn more, but also wanting to bring people together. And I felt that part of me was missing from it. And I think that was essential to communicate to people, is that I always joke, I'm not another Zuckerberg. I'm not trying to like take your data. Like, I wanted people who felt that I was just a young woman who wanted to bring a young queer woman who wanted to bring people together again and see what that feels like. And that I genuinely had my own experience with depression and anxiety, and like we all do. But I think I wanted to tell my story in that way. And I was really lucky because if you go on SayMore, there's an Our Story page. And I know you and I talked about this, but
The best freaking about page I've ever seen in my fucking life.
oh, you're so sweet. I love that. That was
No, because like, okay, so like I have a podcast episode coming out. When this comes out, I will have already had this episode come out, and it's like how to create art with your content. And I'm like, your about page is such a great representation of creating art with your content. And so you did it with your website, and how it's so like beautifully written as a story that captivates you and can really bring you into what this platform is about and who you are, while also creating a whole visual experience that goes along with it. Like this marriage between like art and marketing and business is so beautifully merged in this page. Like I'm its biggest fan.
Oh, I know you've been and I forget it's out there because so like for those listening, the story is, and you can go on and read it. It's on SayMore Co.
Please do, because it's
Yeah.
amazing.
But it's basically I wrote, just like a little essay about why SayMore really came to be. And it's basically like my struggle with depression and how it got really, really bad for the first time. And I was, having suicidal ideation, and I was in California, really alone, isolated from my family. They were on the East Coast. And I just felt I just was like, this is the end for me. Like, it's really not. And I think anyone can relate to. It's like, I think from the outside, anyone would have been like, this woman, like, well, she has so much going for her. Why would she ever feel this way? And I felt disconnected from those two personalities of myself, of like badass, numbers, finance, whatever. And then also like, it's too much. Like, everything's too much. So, I really wanted to talk to someone who would get it and not be alarmed, because I was communicating with my family. I was in therapy, but everyone was just very worried about me. And I think that's fine and reasonable. But I also was like, I just want someone to say, hey, like, yeah, look at all this shit that's going on for you and the world. Like, it makes sense that you're struggling, instead of like, okay, well, what are you doing to get help? And like, do we need to monitor where you're at? And are you eating? And da-da-da. I was like, I trusted that I could take care of myself, but I also wanted to just cry and feel like someone could say, yep, yeah, it's okay that you feel that way, instead of like, we need to get you out of this feeling because you're about to, die, maybe, like, whatever. So it just felt, I was really looking online for it. I was going to join the support group for people who, like, again, suicide is like its own topic and really intense. But I think it's like, again, I could go into a whole rant about how society works with people who feel that way and mental health and whatever. But ultimately, there was a support group only for people who had friends or partners or whatever who had passed from suicide. And I was about to join that support group just to listen. And then I was like, this isn't, and that was kind of my last straw. Like, I didn't want to call the number. I tried to join that support group. It didn't feel right. I was just like, I can't, like, I don't want, this doesn't hit for me. And so then I just had to be like, one more day. And I literally every single day was like, just get through the day, get through today. And you'll see in the story, kind of like, then today became 6 months, and then a year, and now like a year and a half. Now it's been 2 years, which is crazy. It still feels really recent, but that was kind of, again, the true inception of SayMore for me, is that feeling. And I was really lucky because I had a team. My tech team was awesome. When I shared that story with them, because we were talking about building that page, they were like, we want to do something special for this. And I was kind of like, okay, yeah, like maybe add some graphics, whatever. I wasn't thinking anything. And if you go on and you see it, the way they like move the like colors and like the separate the paragraphs and stuff is so,
Yes.
I got
So
chills the first time I saw it. And I really felt seen by my team, because I was just like, they worked for me basically. I wasn't expecting anything, but they were like, this is a really important story. We want to tell it, right? That alone, I was like, that's, again, work with people who care, because they cared. It wasn't just like, okay, let's put the page together and put it up. So, yeah, I felt really lucky with that. And again, I want people to feel me, but I do forget that page is out there, because again, that's such a small part of me. That was such a huge moment for me, but that was such a small part of my story. And I'll still have people reach out and say like, oh my God, I had no idea. Or like, oh, like that was so beautifully said, and I totally relate. And I'm like, oh my God, my heart is like in the internet right now. Like my whole, like my weakest, most vulnerable moment in my head is out there for people to read. But again, I felt really like that was essential part to communicate with SayMore. Like, I'm not just saying like, hey, these are all my accomplishments and this is why you should like me and follow and join the page. It was like, no, here's my heart and soul. Like, I hope you haven't
yes.
felt this way, but if you have, here it is, and take it with grace, and let's go from there. So yeah, I feel really lucky that I had a good team working with that, and I feel grateful that I could tell that story in a way that was not that was balanced it, because that was also challenging. Is I didn't want it to be so bleak, but I also wanted to ring true. So long-winded way.
Yeah, and I love it just, I feel like with a lot of the digital things that we do, with marketing, we have a lot like SEO and AI and data and
Yeah.
all of those things. It becomes too focused on the analytical component of it, and like business has kind of always been like that. It's always been kind of devoid. But in my head, if you're creating a business or you're creating a painting, either way, you're an artist. And
Right.
so, what is art except for something that evokes emotion and passion and movement? And like, you should feel it in your body. And in our businesses, like, our businesses should be an extension of our creative self.
Right.
And especially if you're doing something that you feel so passionate about, where your mental health is a passion of yours, and you're wanting it to make so much difference, just like an artist wants somebody to look at their painting and be completely moved by it. Like,
Mm,
why shouldn't our businesses be our art? And
totally.
so, the way that you have that, I think, is such a great example of where more people who are wanting an impact based business should go into. And I think, even if you have like that vulnerable moment of going through like why this business is so important to you, why you want it in the world, like where it would have fit for you as a person, and things like that, just going through that personal journey without it even being on the page, to just understand who your business is as an entity, is could make such a massive difference in any person's business, especially those who are mission driven and impact driven, you know?
Totally. And I think
So,
people want to feel. I know, like for me, anytime I'm watching a movie or show, or even like scrolling online, I'm trying, I want to feel like I want to feel connected. I
yes.
just think people are drawn to stories, not numbers. We've heard this time and time again. It's just, to me, I think we're really looking for more connection on the internet, because that's where we spend so much of our time, especially in a post
Mhm.
COVID world. And so I just find that, again, like you were saying with mission driven businesses, tell your story, because like you can say there's a million businesses out there that could be similar or whatever like yours, but if you resonate with the people that, again, you're trying to attract, that's huge. That makes all the difference. The people I follow online or the businesses I want to support, I'm literally directly looking for, are they doing good? Are they contributing positively? Whether it's a clothing brand or whatever, I that is a deal breaker for me from like a decision making process. So to me, whenever there's sustainability, or I just bought from this brand that's, again, donating like percentage of your you know bill to the mental health centers and things like that, I was like, oh, done. Like, and I like your stuff. So it's just, to me, I think that's, like we said earlier, that's where a lot of things are going, and I think that's a positive thing for everyone, to feel like you're actually contributing in a way that's not burning the earth or like hurting other people. And I love that. I love seeing it. I see it everywhere in my friends and my communities too, and I just think people want to feel you in your work, no matter what it is, whether it's a shoe brand or whatever. Like, I just think
Mhm.
that matters. And again, especially for marginalized groups, because your audience better than what's previously existed time and time again. So that's another thing where I'm like, just go for it, because people will say, okay, they made that shoe for me. That's completely different than Nike or whatever. I just think that's hugely impactful. Beyond, again, I just think we're living in a world where white men are running the show and the dollars, and so that's who they're making these products for. So if you see that it's not working for you, there's a reason for that, and you should just make your own again and again. Yeah. So again, I'm reiterating that there's so much hope out there, and like I think people are seeing that as well, and like wanting to go out into the world and make it better.
There is. And if you look out into the world, like, you seek those people who are doing this. Like, when I just finished the book, We Shall Be Millionaires by Rachel Rodgers. I told you about that. Oh my
Yeah.
fucking gosh. Like, it was so good. And like, she's like a huge, like, just such a huge name who's doing that. She's living that. And like, okay, like, let's take and help marginalized people level up to the level of the cis white men, you
Right.
know? And um like that's what we need. We need that balance in the world. That's how we're going to create that balance in the world, so that way everybody sees themselves, because like
Yeah.
as queer people, like it's so important for us to see somebody like us in media. I mean, both of us are kind of like late in life queers, and like part of that reason was because we never saw ourselves in
100%.
anyone before. And so how would business be any different when we're looking at these like Gen Zers who are coming into the professional world right now, and they're like, what the hell is this? I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. It's us millennials who are going to be here and showing them like you can do something different. You
Right.
can, because especially like Gen Z just cares so much. Like they are so like, let's change the world. Like, where's the ethics going and stuff like that? And they're calling out these companies who are greenwashing, rainbow washing, and
Yeah.
like pretending to be like they care, and they just truthfully don't,
Right.
and so they're like, fine, I'm going to go to a business who does care.
Yeah.
And we can be that representation of like, you don't just have to shop at those businesses that care. Like you can be a business that cares, and you
Right.
can free yourself from this corporate jail that you feel like you're in, and create something that makes a difference.
Yeah.
And so like that representation that I feel like us millennials are able to provide is not just like a privilege, but a responsibility.
I was just gonna say that. I love the way you said that because I do think, say what you will about Gen Z, I'm done with this like generational bashing. Well, I mean, boomers really annoy me, but I mean the younger generation. I'm so excited. I think they hold people accountable. I know cancel culture is an
Mhm.
issue as well, but they're just very passionate. And again, I think it's easy to look at the world that they've been born into and say, what kind of raw deal is this?
Yeah.
Like I'm pissed about it. This is the first time, like for millennials or anyone, that our generation is worse off than our parents. Like there's a reason that there's this
Mhm.
feeling, there's mental health crisis, and there's so much happening in our bodies that I'm like fair. And I feel the same way. I'm pissed as well that we got here and we're like, okay, now I have to clean up this mess. Like it
Mhm.
makes me livid. And I look at my parents or any older people and I'm like, really? This is what you did to us, and I feel like they want to, they say, oh, we lived through like almost a nuclear war. And I'm like, well, kids are, in their own schools, they're hiding under desks as well. It's like there's
Yeah.
so much. I'm not trying to compare traumas because I don't think that's that helpful either. But I do just think that I am
But it is perspective, like
totally,
it's different, but there's a same element to that. And they're
yeah,
still out there trying to do things differently and trying to change things,
right,
like without a lot of these younger millennials and Gen Zers, like these protests for the genocide happening in
yeah,
Gaza right now, like literally if this same thing happened in the 90s, best believe everyone would be on Israel's side.
yes, yeah,
And because of the way Gen Zers in particular take to things and say, fine, we're going to organize and we're going to create change in this, because they're like, the world is fucked up enough. Like, we
yeah,
don't have that much power. We're going to do what we can with that power.
right.
Is so incredible and needs to be like admired and
Celebrated.
honored and celebrated. Yeah. And like each generation has their
Yeah.
shit that they go through. Each generation has the things that they contribute to the world, right? I think we have a lot of the Gen X and baby boomers that we can attribute a lot of our women's rights to,
Yes. Yes.
but at the same time, this shitting downhill, kind of thing is like, okay, like we said with women, when we come together, we are stronger and we
Yeah.
can create better for the collective. And I
Yes.
think that's where we need to, as a society, be. But especially us younger generations like millennials, Gen Z, and Gen Alpha, coming together and creating something better, because the previous generations refused to do that.
Yeah.
And as business owner, oh, excuse me, as business owners, we can do that in a collaborative effort together, and doing things like, instead of bashing each other, we can help each other rise.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I know you and I do that a lot with like, oh, you're like, "Oh, hey, I know this person that would be great for you," and you send them my way, and like,
Yeah.
"Oh, this you should come on here, like, come on my podcast." Like,
Yeah.
show, tell people how awesome you are and stuff like that.
Right.
Because that idea of together we rise, like, is not just a cool little catchphrase, but like it's a way of business, in my opinion.
Totally. Totally. And you've mentioned a couple times already the scarcity mindset. I think there's room for everyone and
There's
more.
enough money to go around.
Yes. And I think that's also something to be celebrated. Like I just don't think anyone should not do something because they think again, I had a thought with my own business. I'm like, oh, what if someone else does this and they do it worse than I would do it? Or,
Yeah.
like I just was thinking like, oh, if this doesn't exist or someone else does this, I'll be so pissed off, or something, or, another iteration of it. I just think there's so many different, like there's, I think I've talked about this, but I love promoting them too, because there's an app called DIEM. And it's basically supposed to be Reddit for women, where women can go on and just ask their own questions and what have you, and they're brand new. But I was like, oh, they're really similar to what I'm trying to accomplish. I mean, different. We have different. They're just kind of more. But regardless, I'm so excited. I'm like, I would love to co-work with them one day. It's not a threat to me or my work. To me, more spaces for women or any marginalized group to get more information or share their stories. That's nothing against me. And I think people could learn a lot from that mindset instead of being like, oh, well, let's like bash them or try and take their users. It's like I use a bunch of different stuff. I'm not always trying to
Mhm.
just go to one, like monopolizing the market. I just don't think that's needed anymore. I think there's competition in the sense is good, especially for us. So yeah, I find that like don't get bogged down by the scarcity mindset. And for you and I, it's like my network is your network is my network. That's amazing. Like why would we not share that? Like I'm not threatened by you at all. If anything, I'm like, we just keep celebrating each other's work. It's so aligned. It just makes sense for us to collaborate in all the ways and share our work as well together. So again, I think we're seeing that a lot more, especially among women, which historically that hasn't been the case. But yeah, I'm excited about that. I think again, we shouldn't be threatened by each other because we're only more powerful together.
Absolutely. So, what advice would you give a new entrepreneur who has a dream like yours, who wants to have a successful business that is making an impact but doesn't know how to go about it? Especially, you having such a strong like financial background and
Mm.
having like being able to have like this great tech team to build this out. If somebody doesn't have like those types of resources and stuff, what kind of advice would you give them to like get the ball rolling in their
Yeah.
business?
I would say ask for help, especially if you don't have the financial resources. I was reaching out to friends from college originally to help who were in my coding classes to help me potentially start building this. Like, and when you ask for help, I know it's super hard and it feels terrible, but I think you'd be surprised how many people, just out of the kindness of their own heart, want to help you, especially if you're mission driven, and start building up those people and asking them to even just take a few minutes, or especially if you're not good at something. For our logo for Say More, I'm not graphics, I don't know anything. And I asked a friend to just kind of help me pitch this. Don't half-ass anything of your business. Like if this is especially like a logo, that's something that's going to stay forever. So I really shouldn't be doing that kind of work. So ask for help from someone who knows and can do it right. And I think that will be a game changer for you. And even though you feel like you have nothing to offer them right now, maybe that's not that much money, or maybe it's not clout or what have you. I think again, that doesn't mean they need that, right? And like go into it assuming that maybe they might want to help. And if they don't have capacity for whatever reason, ask them to, if they know someone else who will. I just think I was so shocked at how many people were willing to raise their hand or pitch in, and it just built my network naturally. Even if it was, oh, I really can't take that on right now, but here's someone else who I think would care about what you're doing. That's huge. And again, also just from a finance standpoint, set a max budget, and that doesn't mean you have to give up on it when you hit that. Just like that's your MVP, your minimum viable product, and you're at the beginning, it's not going to be perfect. So just be okay with that too, because if it was perfect, you'd never get started, right? So just that, I was okay with my MVP, and I was a little defensive when people were like, well, this could be better, this could be better on the platform. I was like, I am by myself here. I am literally just trying to like get this rolling. So I think really just give yourself a lot of grace and know that this is just stage one. There's gonna be so many better iterations once you start getting that network going and building your business by itself. I think again, the beginning's the hardest part. So just keep going because like so many great ideas are ditched halfway through because of funding or they're too scared to ask for help. And I just think again, I've met so many people, young, old, who have been raised their hand and directed me to people that have helped so much, even just from a legal standpoint. Like you have to do all these hoops and hurdles just to get a business viable from the government, you know? So I just think there's a lot of little things that can be overwhelming if you don't know how to do them. People build whole professions off of that. You know what I mean? So just don't worry that much. Like that, don't get bogged down by that stuff. And just again, keep going. Like please keep going. I promise you, things are gonna start to
Yes.
stick. Yeah.
And to piggyback off that, like perfection is an illusion.
Totally.
So, when we're leaning it, especially, I feel like those socialized as female struggle more with perfectionism than male. And realizing that done is better than perfect. And there's always room for growth and change and polishing and stuff like that. And I think trying to allocate those funds, because like that was one thing in my business that I did not do, is like the budgeting aspect of things. I
Mm,
was so ready to fucking leave healthcare that I'm like, nope, everything's going on the credit card, I'm leaving, like let me go, and stuff like that. Like, and now I'm like paying for it years later, I'm still
right.
paying it off, and so
Yeah.
having that, like, okay, this is my budget, this is how I'm going to financially go about it, like in a savvy way, and giving yourself the time. Like, just because somebody has their business up and running in a year and they're full time in their business or whatever, does not mean that has to be your reality. Just because that is something that you see as the norm doesn't mean it's the norm.
Right.
And you can take longer to build it out in a way that's comfortable for you. It's your business. You can do whatever the fuck you want with it. And also, I would say I would recommend 2 books, and I'll put them in the show notes so that way the listeners have them.
Yeah.
One is We Should All Be Millionaires by Rachel Rodgers. I know I already mentioned it, but I swear to God, it's the best book I've read all year. And 2 is Brave, Not Perfect. I forgot her name, which I will put it in the show notes because I completely forgot her name. But Brave, Not Perfect is also a great one to deal with, like, when you're doing something new, when you're, like, there's a whole reason why it's so hard for us to overcome perfectionism. And
Mm,
this book really dives into it and how you can be brave and leave perfectionism behind. So I will
yeah.
definitely put those in the show notes. So
Wait,
as we wrap up,
the
what's
last
that?
thing, could I just say one last thing about that too?
Go for it.
Um, what, because you mentioned my tech team too. I just also like really work with the right people.
Oh, yeah.
Period. If you're gonna have a
People who align
co-founder,
with you and believe in you. Yeah.
right? Like it's just that'll again make or break you. And I forgot about that. I was especially when I was trying to build up the business. I was like, okay, do I want a co-founder? Do I not? Do they have capacity? Do they not? And also, finally, like if you're building something tech wise, I was in between 2 agencies that were going to build it, and one was the one I went with was more expensive by far. But I was like, this is the bones. I can't really mess up the bones. You know, if the bones aren't right, then like the
Mhm.
whole thing goes to shit. So just be like very intentional about who you want to work with. I wanted to work with women owned tech agencies or marginalized run tech agencies. So yeah, I think just that's my only caveat on the budgeting thing. It's just make sure that you're with the right people. Otherwise it won't even get off the ground. So yeah, just people who care. That's all. Just be around the right people.
Yeah. And those people who like resonate with you and like there feels like a click,
Yeah.
because like that's one thing with my business is like I love working with all of these mission-based clients, but then there are like some clients who I'm just like, oh, I'm marrying you, you're my soulmate client,
Yeah.
like we're besties forever, and even when we're not working together regularly, I'm messaging them and saying like, hey, what's up, like how's life, like,
Yeah.
we become friends and stuff like that. Like there has to be, like, not everybody wants to be besties with their people, but like there has to be some level of like, we get each other, we click. And I
Yeah.
think because you chose people who saw you and clicked with you and believed in you and what you were doing, that's why you got the amazing page website stuff
Yeah,
that you got is because it wasn't just like, oh, well, this is how it's always done. It's like, oh
right.
no, you're different and you need
You
something
need
different, you
exactly,
know? So,
exactly.
okay. So, where can people find you?
Okay, so on social media, we're on LinkedIn and Instagram at SayMore Co. SayMoreCo. And then saymoreco.com is the platform. We're going to be building out an app later, so look for that in the App Store. But right now, it's just online through the website. And please join, follow, or just take a look and see what you find. Where it's really what you make of it. So again, I'm just grateful to even have this opportunity, Nina. So I'm grateful to have met you. And I tell you that all the time. So this is just, again, you meet so many cool people when you just start doing something that you care about. Honestly, it's the best thing ever. It's my favorite part is I'm meeting people who are the
Yes.
coolest, smartest people I've ever met. Networking means something completely different to me now. So yeah.
Yes, I love that. And I'm so excited to have gotten connected with you. I think we are literally making magic together. So
Yes.
be sure to check out Stephanie and Say More. All of the links will be in the description. Thank you so much for listening. Please like, subscribe, follow, review, do all the things. Your support is life giving. Most importantly, remember words are powerful. So go out there, make some magic, and let's start a revolution.